So the first step you want to take before you expand the background is to actually select out the dancer and separate that dancer from the background. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over to the background layer and click on the lock to unlock it. So now the layer is unlocked. And I'm going to go over to the toolbar and I'm going to select the object selection tool. I'm going to pick that tool, and I should be able to click and drag over the dancer, and it should do a pretty good job of selecting her out. If you want to zoom in and check, you can take a look to see if you have everything in the selection. And there's some areas here that are missing a little bit. I can try with another tool if I want to. The quick selection tool is usually pretty good. And if I hold down the shift key, I can add to this selection a little bit just to grab a little more of what's inside here. And let's see how we did. And if it goes too far, you can always hit undo. And it did. It grabs all the background, so I'm going to hit undo. And I'm just going to do a little bit right here. And that just gives me a little bit more. I'm going to try and clean up that edge too around her hairline on her head. And that should be good enough for our purposes. I'm going to zoom back out. Once you have that selection outline, you want to turn it into a layer mask. And the easiest way to do that is to go to the bottom of the layers palette, and you see this little rectangle with a circle in it. That's the layer mask button, and what it will do, it will mask away what's not selected. So when I click on it, you'll notice the background gets knocked out. And if we look at the layer, you see the layer mask thumbnail right there. Once I've done that, the next thing you want to do is duplicate the layer. So I'm going to control click on the layer itself on the outside of the layer, just to the right of the name. And I'm going to actually select duplicate layer, and I can name this background just for clarity, and hit OK. And then I'll pull that underneath and I'll name this dancer, and that just clarifies what the two layers are. Now I'm going to go back down to the background layer, and I'm actually going to invert the mask so it shows me what's the background and removes the dancer. So the easiest way to invert the mask, once I'm clicking on the thumbnail, so I have to have the thumbnail of the mask activated, I hit Command I, and you notice it inverts the mask. If I turn off the dancer layer, you'll see the background with the dancer knocked out from it. And so the dancer is on a separate layer and the background's on a separate layer. So once you've inverted the mask and you have a masked area where the dancer is selected out and you just have the background, you want to apply that mask. And the way you do that is you click on the mask thumbnail and you can control click on it and apply the layer mask. The reason for this is we want to knock out any of the pixels that were underneath the mask of the dancer, because we don't want to actually extend that when we apply the tool. If I don't do this now, what will happen is it will actually stretch those pixels underneath the mask because the tool doesn't recognize what's masked. So now we have this layer without the dancer on it, and we're ready to expand that edge. The next tool I'm going to take is the rectangular marquee tool. You can also get it by hitting the letter M. And I'm going to click and drag on the side here that I want to expand with, and I just want to make sure I don't extend into where the dancer's hair is masked away. So just about like that. So now I have a selection, marquee selection on this right side of the backdrop. And I'm going to go over to the next tool, which is the Content Aware Move tool. It looks like this little X right here. And the one thing you want to be sure is that the mode for the Move tool is Extend rather than Move. And I'm going to click in the center of my selection and drag over, and you will see that it actually extends the background. And I just need it to go far enough to cover that area with her hand. Once I do that, I can check to make sure, especially at the top here, that it's aligned with the actual part of the image that is original. I'm giving it a little nudge. I can expand it just a little bit if I want to by clicking and dragging, just to make sure I have everything, and then nudge it down so it lines up the top of the roll of seamless paper, and that looks pretty good. Once I've done that, all I do is hit return, and it applies the expansion. And then I can hit deselect. And so there may be a little bit of adjustment here. I can come back if I want and try that move again and maybe do a little bit less, just get past that point in your hand, just about like that. That should be pretty good. Do a tiny bit more. just to see if I can get the tone of it to align a little bit better, because it does blend. It's a content-aware blend. Hit return, and that looks pretty good there. I'll deselect, okay? And then the next thing I want to do is come in, and I need to sort of fill in this area where there's a gap. So I'm going to take the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to pull lines just across this edge, just like that, to kind of grab around here, all right? And the easy thing I can do now that I have a selection outline on that layer, is go to Content-Aware Fill, and it will automatically sort of select white tones to blend in, and I can sort of see a preview of it here. I can kind of remove some of this. I don't want quite so much of this selected, so I'm going to kind of remove a little bit of this just to kind of constrain what it uses for the fill, because it's basically going to try and sample those pixels and approximate that. So I'm going to do that, and that's a little bit better blend. I hit OK, and it fills in that area. I can deselect it now. It does show up as a separate layer, which will merge in a second, and that's pretty good. And now I can bring that top layer back on, and there's a little bit of a dimple there, but hopefully we can clean it up, and that looks pretty good. We've masked it back together. So now what I want to do is actually crop this, and that can be done pretty easily by using the crop tool. And the one thing I didn't do before we started was straighten the image out. That makes life a little easier if you do it. So I can sort of see what needs to be straightened here, make sure everything's parallel. Okay, and I'm going to crop in, and I'll clean up that edge at the end. I can actually clone some more edge in. Let's see if the bottom lines up reasonably well. I can rotate this just a little bit. It's actually snapping to the pixel grid, so I can turn that off if I need to, but it seems to be okay. I'll pull this back down, line it up. I'm going to bring this side in a little more, and that looks pretty good. And what I can do, if I really want to clean up this edge, because I think, is I can clone in a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually merge all these together, select them all, hit Command E. That merges this together. I can take the spot healing brush if I want, and actually try and clean up that edge just a little bit. And it seems to do something. There we go. That'll clean that up for me and make it a little bit straighter. I can kind of work in here too, where I see a little bit of tonal shift, and I can do the same thing on this side, and that looks pretty good. The last thing I'm going to do is, you notice there's a little bit of a vertical line right here. It could be something on the Marley, or it could be where we actually extended that area. So I can just go in with a little bit of work with the spot healing brush tool and just click and drag and have it kind of heal a little bit of that. That's actually a natural line on the Marley in the center, and that looks pretty good. And there you have the extended background.